Hey guys, it's Jo. Welcome back to Trauma Talk. I am here in my newly created semi-yoga room. I've been trying to be more consistent with yoga and taking care of myself, which kind of helps with anxiety recently. So that's where we are today, but I wanted to address a question that I was asked online a couple days ago by Amy. So thank you, Amy, so much for your question. She asked, how do you like or love yourself again after trauma? And I think that is such a good question and super applicable to pretty much everyone across the board, because I have yet to meet anyone who has undergone abuse, trauma, but abuse specifically, and wasn't left hating themselves. Rationally, you would think you wouldn't hate yourself, you would hate the person who did all these things to you, which is also true, but there is such a sense of shame that is ingrained with sexual abuse, domestic violence, anything like that. And wow, it is hard to shake. And I haven't successfully done it completely, but I definitely am so much further along than I was years ago. And I wanted to share a story of the moment that really moved me forward more than I think any other moment in my journey in a single step. My counselor was walking me through things for months. We were talking through many different things, doing some EMDR, but one day in particular, I remember it was kind of a culmination of a bunch of different things, and he asked me to picture in that moment where I so hated myself, in that moment where I could have just, I don't know, killed that person who got herself in that situation, being myself, as the abuse was occurring, as that sexual assault was starting, and asked me to picture someone else who I knew and loved dearly in that situation, someone else who had also gone through sexual assault and sexual abuse. And the second I replaced me with that person in that scenario in my head, every single feeling of hatred, of shame, of disdain, of oh, you're so stupid, you're dumb, you're pathetic, instantly vanished. And if anyone had suggested any of those things towards that girl in that situation, I would have chewed their ear off and told them how incredibly wrong they were for even imagining to think anything like that, even imagining that anything like that could have been her fault, and so passionately feeling like, how could you possibly think that that was her fault? And that was kind of a light bulb moment for me when I started putting this person I loved in all of the situations where I constantly hated myself and told myself that that person was stupid and it was their fault and everything was wrong with them. And the moment I substituted someone else, all of those feelings dissipated because they weren't legitimate, because it wasn't her fault. It wasn't my fault, rather. I wasn't stupid, I was naive, I was uneducated, I was ignorant to life, I did miss signs. None of that made what happened my fault. And it was a really long process of continuing to substitute in this other person in these scenarios in my head when all of this self-hatred and self-blame started popping up, when things actually started to release a little bit. Now that was one piece of many different things that I have used to start loving myself and start liking myself again. Another thing that has been really helpful is trying new things and discovering who I am. That was really important because I needed to find my voice, I needed to find who I was, and who I was now was different than who I was before everything happened. And so I needed to experiment with different things. I started drawing, I started doing martial arts and then jiu-jitsu, and I started trying public speaking. These were things I at this point now wanted to give a shot. And what you're gonna wanna try is gonna be totally different. But I would just really encourage you to try things, to, as you are able, join groups or look up classes online or learn something new, because as you're doing that, you're exploring different parts of yourself and you get to learn new things about yourself, and that's pretty cool. And I was able to do that, and in doing that, I was able to find things about myself that I liked and find things about myself that I appreciated and find new people who were safe and trustworthy and good. And that was really helpful in learning to like and then eventually love myself again. I don't think that there is any magical fix-all for learning to love yourself again. I think it's a process. I think it takes time, but it is absolutely possible. What's gonna work for you may be different than what worked for me. Like I said, there were a number of different things that played into my journey of getting to this place, and there will be a number of things that continue on because you know, all that shame and blame continue to crop up sometimes. I have strategies now to, you know, pop it back down into its place out of my life, but it continues to pop back up, and that's what tools are for. That's what counseling can be for. That's what you know, friendships can be for. That's what all different kinds of things can be for. So in answer to your question, how do you learn to love yourself again? How do you learn to like yourself? The two things that worked best for me were substituting someone else who I loved into all of the situations in which I hated myself. And instantly, all of those feelings of hatred disappeared because I could not hate that person because I realized that they weren't actually doing anything wrong. It was just that I attached all of that to myself. But the second it was someone else, it all went away. And so there was this long period where it took those two narratives to meet where I could start to not blame myself anymore, but it did eventually happen. And secondly, trying new things, learning new things, experimenting around and figuring out who you are now and what you like and what you don't like and standing on that. So those are two things that are really helpful for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I am Jo Beckwith. This is Trauma Talk. And as always, please take care of yourself until I see you next time. Thanks so much.